But I do know that Penguin Random House felt that there was definitely more, money, if you like, to be had from him and from them with regards to carrying on writing.
$40 million. That was the number attached to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's publishing deal with Penguin Random House, a figure that made headlines around the world when it was first announced. The promise was ambitious, almost staggering in its scope, a multi-book agreement that would cement the Sussexes as literary powerhouses, storytellers who could shape their own narrative outside the palace walls. Publishing insiders whispered about the potential, the untapped market of royal revelations that Harry and Meghan could deliver straight to bookshelves worldwide. This was supposed to be their literary legacy, proof that leaving the monarchy behind would open doors that royal protocol had always kept firmly shut. The reality that has quietly emerged over the past few years tells a very different story. That $40 million deal, the one that was going to establish Harry and Meghan as serious authors with staying power, has functionally collapsed. Mainstream media outlets are only now catching up to what industry insiders have known for some time, that the relationship between the Sussexes and their publisher has deteriorated beyond repair. One book emerged from this grand arrangement, just one, and according to sources within the publishing world, that single book may have actually cost the publisher money despite selling millions of copies. The question that hangs over this entire situation goes beyond simple business mathematics. When a deal this large falls apart this spectacularly, when weekly phone calls from representatives demanding more money become the defining feature of a professional relationship, something deeper reveals itself about how the Sussexes approach their partnerships. The pattern that emerges from the publishing debacle mirrors what we have seen play out with Netflix, with Spotify, with nearly every major corporate relationship they have cultivated since stepping back from royal duties. Understanding what happened with Penguin Random House offers a window into why the Sussex brand continues to struggle despite all the initial promise and all the breathless coverage of their California reinvention. The original framework of the Penguin Random House agreement was structured to benefit both parties handsomely over multiple years and multiple projects. Reports at the time suggested the total value hovered around $40 million, an extraordinary sum for any author, let alone two people whose writing credentials were basically non-existent. The publisher was betting on access.
Meghan Markle got that deal for the bench based on the fact that Harry was going to do the big book. And he delivered in many respects in the big book, but he didn't make them a profit. They didn't turn over a profit. Right, Penguin Random House?
On the inside story of royal life that only Harry could provide, and on the star power that Meghan brought from her entertainment industry background. Multiple books from both parties would flow from this arrangement, creating a sustained relationship that would keep Sussex content on bestseller lists for years to come. Meghan's children's book, The Bench, arrived as part of this package, riding on the coattails of Harry's bigger commitment to deliver his memoir. The book received mixed reviews and modest sales, certainly nothing that would justify a $40 million investment on its own. Industry observers understood that The Bench was basically a bonus, a side project enabled by Harry's more large contractual obligations. The real money, the real interest from Penguin Random House, centered entirely on what Harry could reveal about life inside the royal family. When Spare finally landed in early 2023, the publishing world held its breath. The memoir delivered exactly the kind of revelations that had been promised, from intimate details about family conflicts to shocking admissions about drug use and combat kills. Initial sales figures were extraordinary, breaking records and generating headlines across every continent. Penguin Random House appeared to have made a brilliant investment, securing the most talked about book of the year from one of the most famous people on the planet. What happened next, or rather what failed to happen, exposed the fundamental weakness in the Sussex publishing strategy. After Spare, silence descended. No announcements about follow-up projects, no hints about what might come next from either Harry or Meghan. The multi-book deal that was supposed to generate years of content and profit simply stopped producing.
The initial deal with this book publisher was a multi-book deal worth around $40 million, right? Multi-book. And so, apart from Spare, there's been no other book that's come out since.
For those paying close attention, the writing was on the wall long before any official confirmation emerged. The sales numbers for Spare looked impressive on paper, and the book technically qualified as a massive bestseller by any reasonable standard. Copies flew off shelves in the first weeks after release, and Harry made the rounds on television programs, discussing his revelations with carefully managed emotion. The publishing industry loves nothing more than a book that generates conversation, and Spare certainly accomplished that goal with room to spare. Hidden beneath the headline figures, however, a more troubling reality was taking shape. A publishing insider has now revealed that despite those millions of copies moving through bookstores and online retailers, Penguin Random House actually overpaid for the privilege of publishing Harry's memoir. The math simply did not work in the publisher's favor when all the costs were tallied up. Marketing expenses for a book this high profile run into the millions, requiring coordinated campaigns across traditional media, social platforms, and physical retail displays. Printing and distribution costs for a global release add another large sum to the ledger. And then there was the ghostwriter's fee, a major expense that publishing insiders suggest was far from modest, given the caliber of talent required to shape Harry's thoughts into readable prose. The damning assessment from someone with direct knowledge of the situation cuts through all the celebration of sales figures. According to this insider, the publisher will never earn out on Spare, meaning the book will never generate enough revenue to justify the advance payment or trigger any royalty payments to the author. Those are devastating words in an industry where earning out represents the basic threshold of success. A book can sell millions of copies and still lose money for everyone involved if the initial investment was sufficiently inflated. Perhaps the most telling indicator of Spare's cultural staying power came from an unexpected source. Reports emerged that the memoir had become the most abandoned book at holiday resorts, with vacationers reading it during their trips and then leaving it behind rather than carrying it home. The image is almost too perfect as a metaphor for the Sussex brand itself, something people are curious about in the moment, but not particularly interested in keeping around. The ongoing relationship between the Sussexes and Penguin Random House deteriorated into something that publishing executives dread, a constant battle over money with authors who refuse to accept financial reality. According to a source familiar with the situation, executives at the publishing house found themselves fielding near weekly calls from Camp Sussex asking for more money. The Sussexes apparently believed that royalties were accumulating somewhere, waiting to be dispersed, while the publisher maintained that no such payments existed or would ever exist given the financial structure of the deal. The disconnect between expectation and reality extended far beyond simple miscommunication about payment schedules. This same insider offered a more pointed observation about Harry specifically, stating that the prince has a fundamental disconnect to the concept of money, and certainly that money can, and indeed runs out. Those words carry the weight of repeated frustration, the kind that builds over months or years of attempting to explain basic financial concepts to someone who has never truly needed to understand them. Growing up as a royal means growing up insulated from the practical realities that govern most people's lives. Bills get paid by someone else. Expenses are managed by staff members who exist specifically to handle such mundane concerns. The concept of finite resources, of budgets that constrain choices, of income that must exceed expenditure, these ideas remain abstract for someone who has always had access to whatever they needed. Harry may have left the royal family, but the mindset shaped by decades of privilege does not simply disappear because someone relocates to California. The pattern that emerges from these weekly calls for additional money echoes what has been reported about the Sussex relationship with Netflix. Constant renegotiation, persistent requests for more favorable terms, an apparent belief that initial agreements represent starting points rather than binding commitments. Corporate partners eventually tire of these dynamics, no matter how famous the talent involved might be. Meghan herself attempted to use the existing publishing relationship into new projects, sending 2 separate book proposals to Penguin Random House after Spare's release. Both pitches met firm rejection from a publisher that had apparently lost enthusiasm for Sussex content. The first proposal centered on leadership and philanthropy, topics that Meghan has positioned herself as an authority on through various public appearances and initiatives. The second pitch was reportedly the controversial divorce book that Vanity Fair had previously mentioned, though representatives for the Sussexes have denied that any such project exists. Understanding why these proposals failed requires recognizing what publishers actually want from their investments. Books about leadership and philanthropy from someone without a track record of building organizations or managing large charitable operations hold limited appeal for readers. The market is already saturated with such titles from business leaders and nonprofit founders who can point to concrete accomplishments. Meghan's credentials in this space remain largely theoretical, built on speeches and appearances rather than measurable impact. A publisher looking at projected sales would struggle to justify any major advance for such a project. The divorce book, if it exists in any form, presents different problems entirely. Certainly there would be appetite for Meghan's account of her marriage, and any potential separation from Harry. Tabloid fascination with the Sussexes ensures at least some audience for virtually anything bearing their names. But the credibility problem looms large over any such project. After being caught in documented inconsistencies about her involvement with Spare, after various public statements that have been contradicted by evidence, Meghan asking readers to trust her version of events becomes a major obstacle. Publishers must weigh not just potential sales but potential backlash, legal exposure, and reputational damage from associating with content that might be challenged as inaccurate. Neither proposal offered what Penguin Random House actually wanted, which was fresh, sellable content that would justify further investment in the Sussex brand. The publisher had already been burned once and showed no interest in repeating the experience. The source familiar with Penguin Random House's internal deliberations used language that leaves no room for interpretation. The publisher is done with the Sussexes, and that word done appeared in the quote with all capital letters, emphasizing the finality of the decision. This represents more than a business relationship cooling off or a temporary pause while both parties reassess their options. According to this insider, Penguin Random House will never publish another book by Harry or Meghan. The door has closed permanently. The financial reasoning behind this decision comes through clearly in the source's characterization of how the publisher views the partnership in retrospect. They were financially burned, a phrase that communicates both the scale of the losses and the emotional weight of having made a bad bet on talent that failed to deliver returns. Publishing houses make these calculations constantly, weighing potential rewards against likely risks, but the Sussex deal apparently tipped so far into negative territory that no future project could justify renewed engagement. What makes this severing particularly notable is the complete nature of the break. Many publishing relationships end badly but leave open the possibility of future collaboration under different circumstances or with different terms. Authors who underperform sometimes rehabilitate their careers and return to houses that previously dropped them. The Sussex situation offers no such ambiguity. Penguin Random House has apparently decided that no terms would be favorable enough, no project compelling enough, to warrant further involvement with Harry and Meghan. The reputational damage extends beyond this single publisher as well. The publishing industry operates on relationships and reputation, with editors and executives moving between houses and sharing information about difficult authors. Word spreads quickly about talent that proves challenging to work with, and the Sussex experience will inform how other publishers approach any future pitches from the couple. The collapse of the publishing deal gains additional context when viewed alongside the simultaneous deterioration of the Sussex relationship with Netflix. The streaming giant that once seemed eager to build an entire content strategy around Harry and Meghan has steadily retreated from that position, culminating in what appears to be a functional end to their partnership. The patterns across both corporate relationships are strikingly similar, raising questions about whether the problem lies with the partners or with the Sussexes themselves. Both deals began with enormous fanfare and astronomical financial figures. Both featured early projects that generated attention but failed to meet commercial expectations. Both devolved into disputes over creative direction and financial terms, and both ended with the corporate partners apparently exhausted by the experience of working with Harry and Meghan. The consistency of these outcomes suggests a systemic issue rather than isolated bad luck. Meghan's public criticism of Netflix proved particularly damaging to any hopes of salvaging that relationship. Her characterization of the streaming service as too cautious in their approach to her content was the kind of bridge-burning statement that corporate partners do not forget or forgive. Telling the world that a company worth billions of dollars did not understand how to properly market her content demonstrated either striking confidence or striking lack of self-awareness, depending on one's perspective. The social media behavior of Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos offered a symbolic but telling epilogue to the partnership. Sarandos unfollowed both Meghan's personal Instagram account and the As Ever brand account, a small gesture that nonetheless communicates volumes about how leadership at the company views the relationship. Executives at that level do not make such moves accidentally, and the message was clearly intended to be noticed. Despite the full rejection from Penguin Random House, sources indicate that Meghan continues to develop a memoir of her own. The project apparently remains active in some form, with Meghan working on material that could eventually become a published book if the right deal emerges. The strategic calculation behind such a project reveals the fundamental tension at the heart of the Sussex brand in its current form. The honest assessment of market interest is that virtually no one cares about Meghan Markle's life before she met Prince Harry. Her acting career generated modest success on a cable television show, but hardly the kind of cultural footprint that would sustain a memoir. Her childhood and early adult years, while presumably meaningful to her personally, do not offer the compelling narrative that would attract publishing interest or reader attention. The value in any Meghan memoir resides entirely in what she can reveal about royal life, about her conflicts with the institution, about her relationship with Harry. This creates an impossible timing problem for any potential book. Meghan has reportedly claimed that she does not want to further embarrass the monarchy, suggesting sensitivity to how additional revelations might be received. But royal content is precisely what would sell, and any memoir stripped of palace drama would struggle to justify a major publishing investment. The commercial incentives push directly toward exactly the kind of disclosure that Meghan supposedly wants to avoid. The authenticity problem compounds these challenges. A source close to the situation offered a pointed observation about what any Meghan memoir would actually contain, noting that it will be Meghan's version of events. The phrasing implies skepticism about whether that version would align with verifiable reality, a concern that any publisher would share given the documented inconsistencies in previous Sussex public statements. The trajectory of Harry's role in the Sussex public presence has shifted dramatically since those heady early days of their California reinvention. The prince, who once commanded the publishing industry's attention with promises of royal revelations, now appears increasingly peripheral to the couple's activities. His focus has narrowed to specific causes, particularly his ongoing security battles and and his work with the Invictus Games Foundation, while the broader Sussex brand building falls primarily to Meghan. The original 4-book publishing deal was built around Harry's access and Harry's story. He was the one with inside knowledge of palace operations, the one whose name carried weight with readers hungry for royal content. Meghan benefited from his deal rather than driving it, securing her children's book opportunity through his larger contractual framework. The power active within their public partnership appeared relatively balanced, with both bringing distinct assets to their shared enterprise. The image that has emerged in recent months tells a different story entirely. Observers noted Harry filming Meghan as she arranged flowers for Instagram content, serving basically as a camera operator for her social media presence. The prince, who was fifth in line to the British throne, who represented the monarchy on official visits around the world, who commanded attention simply by walking into a room, has been reduced to supporting player in his wife's content creation efforts. Whether this shift reflects changing priorities within their relationship or changing market realities about their respective appeal, the visual impact carries undeniable weight. Meghan remains the one developing new projects, pitching new books, building new brand extensions. Harry's role appears increasingly limited to lending his title and his presence to her initiatives rather than driving his own. For someone raised to expect that he would always be the one commanding attention, this adjustment must require major psychological accommodation. Pulling back from the specific details of the publishing collapse reveals a broader pattern of Sussex business ventures failing to meet expectations or partners. The full nature of this pattern suggests something more fundamental than simple bad luck or challenging market conditions. Each individual setback could be explained away through circumstance, but the accumulation of setbacks points toward consistent underlying causes. The as-ever lifestyle brand that Meghan has promoted with such enthusiasm faces its own challenges that mirror the publishing problems. Trademark filings in Australia ahead of the couple's upcoming trip reveal an interesting limitation in the brand's scope. The registration covers yoga straps, pet feeding mats, gardening tools, bath and shower gels, jewelry and furniture, but especially excludes food products. Given that jam and other food items have been central to the as-ever branding, this omission suggests the complexity of international food regulations may have forced a strategic retreat. The Australian trip itself, positioned as a triumphant return to a country where Harry and Meghan enjoyed tremendous success during their 2018 tour, faces a reception that falls far short of those earlier heights. A poll conducted by Yahoo Australia asked readers whether they were excited about the Sussex visit, and the results were devastating. 95% of the 747 respondents said no, they were not excited. Only 5% expressed any enthusiasm for the upcoming trip. These numbers reflect a fundamental miscalculation that has plagued Sussex planning since they departed royal life. The assumption seems to be that the goodwill generated by that 2018 tour, when Meghan charmed crowds and the couple represented the monarchy at its most glamorous and relatable, would simply persist indefinitely. The intervening years apparently did not register as potentially damaging to that reservoir of affection. The Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, the book revelations, the constant stream of criticism directed at the royal family, all of this was somehow expected not to affect how the Australian public viewed them. 8 years have passed since that successful tour, and the information scene has shifted entirely. Books by Valentine Lowe and Tom Bauer revealed behind-the-scenes details about Meghan's behavior during that trip, including alleged resentment about working without compensation and other incidents that cast the earlier coverage in a different light. Expecting to simply reappear and harvest the same enthusiasm demonstrates a disconnection from how public perception actually functions. The question that remains after examining the wreckage of the Penguin-Random House relationship is what comes next for the Sussexes in the publishing world. Someone will almost certainly acquire Meghan's memoir if she chooses to pursue it seriously, because the market for royal-adjacent content has not entirely disappeared. The question is not whether a deal will happen, but rather at what price and with what expectations attached. The use in any such negotiation has shifted completely away from the Sussexes, where once publishers competed for the privilege of working with them, offering astronomical advances in hopes of landing the next big royal tell-all. Now the calculation looks very different. Meghan needs publishers more than they need her, a reversal that will be reflected in whatever terms she ultimately accepts. The days of $40 million multi-book agreements are over, replaced by more modest offers that reflect the actual commercial performance of previous Sussex content. The broader question that hovers over the entire Sussex enterprise is perhaps the most troubling one they face. From the very beginning, their post-royal brand was built on one primary asset: their story. The departure from the monarchy, the conflicts with family members, the insider perspective on palace life, these elements formed the foundation of every deal they signed and every project they pursued. Netflix wanted their story. Spotify wanted their story. Penguin Random House wanted their story. But stories have endings, or at least diminishing returns. Each revelation makes the next one less surprising. Each family conflict disclosed leaves less material for future disclosure. The Sussexes have been mining the same vein for years now, extracting value from their royal connections while simultaneously damaging those connections through the extraction process. At some point, the mine runs dry. The publishing collapse offers a preview of what that exhaustion might look like across all their ventures. Penguin Random House decided that nothing the Sussexes could offer would justify continued investment. Netflix appears to have reached similar conclusions. The corporate world that once eagerly courted Harry and Meghan has apparently tired of the experience. What happens to a brand built entirely on telling its own story when no one wants to pay to hear that story anymore? The Sussexes may be about to find out if their entire value proposition depends on access to their narrative, and if the market for that narrative has reached saturation, then the foundation of their California existence becomes genuinely precarious. Jam sales and lifestyle content and gardening tools cannot replace the massive deals that once seemed to promise unlimited financial security. The coming months in Australia will offer a test of sorts, an opportunity to demonstrate that the Sussex brand retains commercial viability in at least one market. But the poll numbers suggest the test may not go well, and another high-profile disappointment would only accelerate the trajectory that the publishing collapse has already established. Sound off in the comments, and if this is your first time here, subscribe. You will want to be here for what is coming.